Hello, good morning. We are going to talk about 5 ways you can use gallery walks in your classroom. So if you missed it, yesterday I shared about what gallery walks are and how I like to use them normally in my classroom, but today I wanted to come and share with you 5 ways you can take the materials that you might usually use for a gallery walk and kind of stretch them and get more use out of them. So the first way, which I'm not even really going to count as one of the 5, is to just use the readings as a gallery walk. So I'm not going to go through all of that again because like I said, I just did that live yesterday, but basically you hang the readings up around your room. Your students have a graphic organizer or comprehension questions, and they're just going to walk around and interact with the readings. Okay, that's kind of my traditional way to use gallery walks. Let's talk about some other ways you can use them. So if you're unfamiliar with how to use gallery walks and you want kind of like the full explanation, there's a live on my IGTV from yesterday that goes a lot further into it than that really quick explanation. So I was just going to share with you some other options for you. The first option is to print just like a couple of them. So like each one I make has quite a few readings in it. So you could just pick 4 or 5, depending on how many kids you have at a station, and put them at a station or like a center. So when you're doing, maybe students are doing a reading activity here, a listening activity there, a writing activity there, and a speaking activity over here, these are really great options to use for the reading station if you were doing a unit on, whatever unit you happen to have the readings for, because there's a bunch of them. When I make these, all of them cover the same things. So like this particular example that I'm holding in my hand is for my school schedule set. And in every single one of these, it's a person and they introduce themselves and they share about their class schedule. They share about the materials, like the, pencils, papers, like that sort of stuff that they need. And they share about like the classes that they like or dislike. So those kind of 5 things you could say here, take 5 readings and identify those 5 things about each of these people. Boom, station. Okay, and you could make it smaller, right? If your students are taking longer, say, okay, here's 3 readings. Identify those 5 things. Okay, or you can use less of them. Okay, so that was one, was using it as stations. Another option, now they're all over the place, is when you download them, they come right, I keep holding these up so you can kind of see what the pages look like. I also include a page that works as like a cover. So that first page says In La Escuela, and it's got a picture of like some of the students. And then there's a last page that's got some like questions that your students could answer about themselves. You just print it, staple it, throw it in your classroom library. Mini book. Now it's like a little book your students can use. And if it's long, like some of my gallery walk sets have like 24 readings in them, you could split it in half. Mini book 1, mini book 2. Right? That would be something that I might do depending on my students, right? If I have a ton of lower novices, I might split up one of the bigger sets. It's just a really easy way to throw them into your classroom library and just get more use out of them, and your students can reread them and look at them. Another option is to just pick a reading and use it for a warm-up or use it for like your end of class kind of wrap up. So you could pull this one and you project it on your screen, or you, wherever it is that's easier. If you have like a dot cam, you could throw it down underneath it and you just give your students a few comprehension questions, right? This person's name is Bob. False. Okay? Like things like that. And you just give them a quick way to read and interact with it. And then if you wanted to, you could do that for every day of your unit, unless your school unit is like really long. Chances are there's going to be enough readings for you to kind of stretch that out as a warm-up all the way throughout. If you didn't want to do comprehension questions, you could just pull a reading and highlight like 5 lines from it. I probably wouldn't do the whole thing as a warm-up, but you could just have them translate it. Say, take the first, 5 sentences or so, or any section that you really want them to practice, and have them translate it. Or you could tell your students, hey, here's the reading, pick 5 sentences and translate it on your paper. Up to you. That's a really simple, easy way to use these as a warm-up. Okay, so stations, classroom library, warm-up, and kind of cool down isn't the appropriate word. Like class wrap-up activity, that's a good way to do this. Is kind of a formative assessment, like check. Another option for you to do is to use them for a horizontal translation. All of these ones, this particular example, actually most of them are in the yo form, because I want my students to get a lot of repetition of the yo form, because then when I ask them questions, they're going to have this as an example. But a good way to reuse this, right, we're talking about ways to stretch them and ways to get them to go further, is you would post this and you would have them take this and say, okay, so right now it says, me llamo Peyton, mi clase favorita es la física. Okay, now instead of saying me llamo, we're going to flip it, so se llama, su clase favorita es la física. And the first few times you do a horizontal translation, you're going to need to model it for your students. That's just how, they're going to need that support. But after you've done it a few times, they're going to start to understand, okay, I want you to shift perspective from I, my, to his and her, or their, or we, right? You just tell them, how do you want them to rewrite it? And it's a really, really good way for them to kind of practice playing with the language in their brain. Okay? And you could even do it the other way. You could take one of these readings and tweak it to be a different perspective and have them tweak it back, because this is something that would be kind of an easier direction at first for them, most likely. Okay. Another option that is really similar, but I wanted to give you that option. This is actually something I learned from a teacher who left feedback on, I think it was this school set. She said, hey, you know what I actually did for this is I went through them and I took, I just picked a reading. I'll just find one I haven't shown you yet. And she whited out all of the verbs, just removed them, and had the students, and put an infinitive there, and had the students rewrite the paragraph with the correct forms of the verbs. And she said that was a fantastic thing to do towards the end of the unit, because they'd already had a lot of practice with this. So just, again, another option, not horizontal translation, but just kind of like a fill in the blank activity for them. That's something that I would do towards the end after they've had a good chunk of practice. All right, last option that I have for you, to use this reading and to use it as a mentor text kind of thing. So you give the student a reading, or you give each student a copy of one, and you have them follow this same kind of outline and just change anything about it that's not true for them to be true for them. Okay, so right now it says, mi clase favorita es el inglés. Well, okay, maybe your student's favorite class is Spanish class, so they can just replace that word with a word that does apply. And that's, again, something that you would model for them. Maybe you take one as a whole class and you do it together on the screen, and you walk them through you doing it for yourself. And then you say, okay, everyone, go pick a reading, or here's a whole bunch of readings, take one, and now you're going to do it. And then you have a whole nother writing activity that is really very scaffolded, because when you think about that, they're not creating the verbs, they're not creating the structure of the sentences, they're just going to swap out words. Okay, and you could even give them a bank of words if they need it. It's going to depend on where in your unit you're choosing to include this. If it's really early in your unit, you might want to say, okay, here's a big list of the classes that we all take. Here's a big list of adjectives for how we could describe classes, and maybe do a little kind of warm up with the vocab, so that way they're kind of thinking about what are some things I could use as I'm switching these out. But towards the end of a unit, they're probably not going to need that support. You could probably just say, okay, make it about you instead. And you could even give them a blank space here and have them draw themselves, or have them put in a picture. That could be a really great way to take this throughout a whole unit and then turn it into kind of their final project. And then, oh my gosh, what if you did that? I just literally just thought of this. What if you did that? You had your students put a picture of themselves here and they wrote their own, and then you gallery walked your students. That would be fun. I think that would be really fun anyways. Maybe you're simmer down. All right, so that's just kind of an example of the ways that you can use them. There's a ton of different options. They're really, really flexible. Any reading activity that you might usually do with your students is something that you could do with these. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that just because I call them gallery walks and I like to use them as gallery walks doesn't mean that's how you have to use them in your classes. Last example for you in case you missed this yesterday. So all of my pre-made sets like this come with reading comprehension activities like this one. So this is on Google, or this one is on Boom Cards, but the same thing is on Google Slides for you. So that way, if you prefer to use Google Slides, you can. It's the same reading that I would hang up for them. This is the sports unit one, not the school one, if you're wondering why there's a person swimming. And they just answer true and false questions about it. That's a really simple way to kind of check in with your students and just using the readings again, getting a little bit more out of it. I want to make sure you knew I have these for so many topics. So there are some I showed you in la escuela one, that's the one I've been holding up a lot. I have ones for La Familia. So what it is it's a character introducing their family, and they say, this is my cousin, let me describe them to you, all of that sort of stuff. I have one for sports. That was the one that you saw with the girls swimming. I have one I call it Introductions and Personal Descriptions, but it's basically like the first unit of Spanish 1 where they learn, hi, my name is, describing myself, saying how old I am, talking about some basic interests, all of that in a gallery walk. In La Ciudad, where they talk about buildings in the city, and they are kind of like going out and about their day, but it's prepositions of location. Las Mascotas, where they share about their pets and what their pets need. The Introductions and Personal Descriptions one, I have one for famous women, for famous Spanish speakers, famous African Americans. There's a whole bunch of those. Oh, and famous athletes, because it's kind of that same concept that my Spanish ones needed a lot of practice with, but it's a fun way to kind of highlight these other people and actual people, right, rather than made up people. We talked about school, hobbies, and pastimes, so things that they like and dislike doing and how often they like to do them. Animals, clothing, although the clothing ones are a little bit different. They're not like person and paragraph. You get pictures of people, and the students have a handout or questions that describe what the people are wearing, and they have to walk around and find them. So, all right. I think that was all of them. There's 13 sets, so there's a lot of options for you. So if you just wanted to grab one set and try this out and see, okay, I could use it for stations, or I could use it as a warm-up, or I could use it all the way throughout a unit in all of these different ways, grab any one of them. Or if you want, I have a whole bundle of all of those things that I described ready for you. Hopefully that wasn't overwhelming to you. Hopefully you just feel like, oh my gosh, I have so many ideas for ways that I could use these and reuse them over and over again. And you might have noticed that these are a little glossy. They're laminated. I print mine, I laminate them, and I use them over and over again. So once you've got them printed and prepped and cut, there's not a lot of prep to them. All right. As always, if you have any questions, if you need anything, feel free to drop me a comment. I'm here for you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.